The wise abandon reason and expectation upon entering the forests of Athel Loren. The foolish will find themselves being lured by malicious spirits, posing as guides, following paths that disappear beneath their feet, pursuing settlements hidden by magical fog, wandering amongst ever-shifting trees for what seem like months, only to emerge precisely where and when they first entered. This is the nature of Athel Loren, and not unlike the Chaos Wastes, the land does as it will, and time itself is convoluted. The ASRAI rule over this land via 12 realms and their 15 reigning lords and ladies. This council answers to King Orion and Queen Ariel, whose seat resides within the King's Glade at the heart of Athel Loren, next to the Oak of Ages. In all matters, Queen Ariel has the final say, as she is the forest, and all that dwell within manifest. Wood elf settlements are not cut, but woven and grown from the trees and foliage of Athel Loren using special singing techniques taught long ago to the ASRAI by Durthu, last of the elders. Between homes and cities melding into and from the forest, and illusory spells that further mask the settlement's locations via mirages and fog, foes and unwanted guests lose themselves within these woods frequently. The halls sung from these trees have walls and ceilings of roots and branch, adorned with gorgeous jewels and precious metals. Deeper within the floral abodes are often elaborate networks of caves filled with the sound of laughter and merriment, as the elves glut themselves on the bounty of the forest in celebration. Lanterns containing fey luminescent creatures shine ethereal light down upon the frequent dancing and feasting of the ASRAI. The enchanted nature of the forest provides eternal youth to the human serving boys who are kidnapped from Bretonnia, and now forevermore walk these halls offering fairy wine and woodland game upon platters of silver to their wood elf masters. Talsyn, the Groves of Eternity, ruled by Lord Arranoc the Bold. The bond between elves and spirits is strongest in the core of Athel Loren, within the realm of Talsyn, also known as the Groves of Eternity. There are 3 reasons why this is so. Here grows the King's Glade, where the consort King Orion and the Mage Queen Ariel sit their bramble thrones, presiding over their verdant court. Secondly, this realm is where the world roots from the Oak of Ages converge, allowing instantaneous transport to where the ancient oak's roots still grow and forests still thrive. Lastly, the Council of the 12 Realms convene here. The realm is essentially Athel Loren's capital, and Lord Arranoc, called the Bold, rules this region. This earns him the envy of his peers, who know not fully the immense burden of responsibility that comes with such a position. Arranoc, the Summerstrand, ruled by a Modryn Ironbark. The realm of Arranoc, called the Summerstrand, is a fief of sunlight. Winter never comes, and nights rarely fall. However, let not its summery climes deceive you, for the land is little more than a death trap. Elves and forest spirits lull naive visitors into a hedonistic daze with feasts and drink, only to carry off and abandon their drunken guests before the vaults of winter. Here they are consumed as sacrifices by creatures who feed on those glutted with pleasure. Argwylon, the Moonspring Glades, ruled by Lord Thelandor Doomstar. The rivers and waterfalls of Argwylon teem with singing spirits, for it is a particularly magical realm, even for Athel Loren. It is here that old and forgotten lore is kept and guarded by the elves, who have grown arrogant in their studies, becoming even insufferable to the usually friendly, water-dwelling naiads. The great eagles of Moonspring Glades Mountains still get along with the resident ASRAI, however, simply due to the ancient tongue they share. Modryn, the Night Glens, ruled by Lady Morlana and Lord Arliss. The perpetual twilight of Modryn, the Night Glens, is a remnant of darker times in Athel Loren's history. Mage Queen Ariel's once corrupted soul and the lands this corruption spread to have since healed, but this realm never fully recovered from those ill-fated days. Where once this kingdom was bright and welcoming, now the only light to be had within its shadowy glades comes from the fake glow of spites in the canopy, darting amongst the branches. The customs practiced here are taboo, and the gods worshipped should have been abandoned long ago. But such is the culture in a land long steeped in bleak darkness. Cavaroc, the Skymark reaches, ruled by Lord Adriel of Equos. The horse masters of Cavaroc's Skymark reaches are the first to battle when Athel Loren marches to war. Conversely, they are always the first to be attacked due to the geographical position and lightly wooded grasslands of this area. This vulnerable terrain has fostered a brashness and ferocity in its people, who are always eager to pour out from the plains and valleys upon their elven steeds to charge headlong into enemy ranks. In more recent years, the elves here have transitioned to more subtle approaches in defending these lands. One such strategy involves many shape-shifting spirits native to Cavaroc, posing as Bretonnian nobles, governing the nearby dukedoms, allowing attacks to be quashed before they begin. Atylwyth, the Winterheart, ruled by Lord Skeelan of the Hooked Blade. Atylwyth is a realm of eternal frost and cold. The ice statues that adorn its paths and halls are a mixture of imprisoned forest spirits who have become too irksome to let roam freely, and some are artistic works of actual ice created by wood elves who sing snow and glacier into aesthetically pleasing shapes, making ice sculptures. Colder climes tend to stagnate the fervor of forest spirits, so here in the Winterheart, elves make up the bulk of those who guard the wood. Cythral, the Wildwood, ruled by Lady Drea the Nighthawk. The Wildwood of Cythral is among the most unwelcoming of Athel Loren's fiefs. The elves here maintain a prison of menhir stones and ranger patrols to contain those forest spirits who would see even the ASRAI harmed. Even fellow elves caught trespassing are often summarily executed and their remains cremated, for some of the malevolent spirits have disguised themselves as lords on the council in times past. Tirsyth, the Ashenhall, ruled by Lady Arda of the Parted Veil. ASRAI, residing outside the Ashenhall of Tirsyth, consider the realm a dismal and dreary place. The lordship's colors are ashen, his people's disposition gloom. This drab reputation comes from an ardent respect, not just for the growth of life, but the diminishment of death. To this end, the forest spirits here often stand guard by statues of elven heroes, whose bodies have long since been returned to and consumed by the forest. Wydrioth, the Pine Crags, ruled by Lord Findal and Lady Evelyn. Leagues upon leagues of walls and castles sung into shape from rockbriar and sky-crown oak make up the Pine Crags of Wydrioth. Tunnels and maze-like pathways woven from roots connect these fortifications into a defensive network. The fief is impenetrable by the greenskin walls or dwarven throngs that threaten from the Grey Mountains, and utterly inescapable by any army nurturing second thoughts and considering retreat. A feature most pleasing to the reigning lord, Findal, who is more bloodthirsty than most wood elves, and rules over the craggy partitions of this fortress realm. Fear Darric, the Trickster's Wood, ruled by Lady Hagria of the Mask. Fear Darric is a holy wood where the trickster god Loic is worshipped. Wandering war dancers who live in his way, laughing cruelly at their own mad murderous japes, often find a home here in the feast halls of the war dance. The festivals of the equinox see the sadistic pranks intensified and extended, elves gathering to challenge human guests to friendly trials of combat, promising guidance and freedom upon victory. These victims are considered poor sport if they perish before at least 100 wounds can be inflicted. Torgovann, the Forge of Starlight, ruled by Lord Daith. Torgovann contains the Forge of Starlight, a shrine to the elven smith god Val, and the location of his mythical anvil. The sparks and flame that dance and leap as the anvil is struck and arms are forged create warming lights. These motes of energy attract curious spirits taken with the life fire brings, but also acutely aware of their own particularly flammable constitutions. Lord Daith is the ruler and Grandmaster Smith of this realm, and an enigmatic lord to say the least. None question his skill, but his age is cause for much uncertainty. Many believe he is older than Orion and Ariel, regardless of his ancient origins, and despite his blindness, there are no greater elven smiths in all the world. Anmyr, the Witherhold, ruled by Lady Cavaroc and Lady Delena. Many centuries ago, Morgur, the Shadowgate, was slain in the realm of Anmyr, called the Witherhold ever since. The beastman's foul, corrupted blood has seeped into the once fertile soil and has ever since been polluting the lands for miles around. The great elm Atylwyth, which once housed the rulers of this forest within its wooden halls, now stands a withered husk and a grim monument to what was lost. The green and fruit have left the surrounding earth, now barren. The area is perpetually under attack by endless hordes of rank braying beastmen, who are drawn to the site's blighted energies. This never-ending secret war that takes place beneath the withered canopies also attracts elves from the other realms across Athel Loren, who fear the corruption will spread to their own homes, and thus seek to strike at its core. Perhaps the most important landmark in Athel Loren is the Oak of Ages growing from the center of the Kingsglade. An absurdly massive oak tree brimming with magical power. A single acorn dropped from its rotund branches contained within immense amounts of the wind Gyran, the wind that powers the lore of life. Once upon a time, a squirrel who ate one of these acorns grew to such enormous size, it took the entirety of Athel Loren's forces to prevent the gargantuan rodent from leveling the 12 realms. When collected properly and safely, shortly after they fall from the oak's boughs, they are used to restore damaged and burned parts of Athel Loren. Beneath the Oak of Ages, its roots spread far and wide under land and sea, thus called the World Roots. These roots extend eastwards to the Dragon Isles within the Sea of Dread, westwards all the way to the frosty pines of Nagaroth. It was through these world roots that the spirits of Athel Loren first made contact with the elves of Avaloran's forest on the island country of Ulthuan. Athel Caiellin, the Dreaming Wood. Areas of Athel Loren where magic hangs heavy in the air often contain ripples and tears in reality to a shadow realm known as the Dreaming Wood, or Athel Caiellin, a parallel dimension existing alongside the forest proper. The ASRAI only seek this realm out in the most desperate of times. Crossing the Veil invites Lanesh and her minions to feast on your wandering soul. The Wild Heaths. The Wild Heaths make up the eastern border of Athel Loren. Stunted trees and shrubs meld into the sprawling moors that encircle the 12 realms. The ASRAI erect enchanted stones here called menhirs to contain the forests. It is a constant, urgent struggle to maintain these partitions. Constant because of the natural inclination of the sentient wood to spread ever outward. Urgent because if the spellweavers and spellsingers neglect this duty, the woods will overextend, and many spirits and trees will either die or be driven insane by the corruption of the outside world. Thus is Athel Loren protected by the elves, who themselves are protected within. Laurelorn. At the peak of worldwide Ulthuani dominance, the elves had settled virtually all of the non-mountainous regions of the Old World, including the lowlands of Bretonnia, the Empire, Kislev, Telea, and Estalia. Unfortunately, the elves suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the dwarves during the War of the Beard, and the Phoenix King called all elven colonists to retreat back to Ulthuan. Athel Loren was not the only colony to refuse these calls home. There was another group of elves, deep within the heart of the lands that would later become the Empire, who also decided to stay within the forests they had settled. Calling themselves the Aeonir, these elves were at first worried that dwarven vengeance would now fall upon them due to their decision to stay in the Old World when so many other colonists had fled. In truth, the dwarves, while victorious, had suffered grievous losses of their own, and were too focused on rebuilding to bother with a couple of isolated elven colonies. Laurelorn and Athel Loren were safe for a time. Meanwhile, the human tribes of the surrounding lands eventually coalesced into the Empire. After the disappearance of the first emperor, named Sigmar, 3 of his subordinate elector counts from the nearby provinces of Westerland, Middenland, and the Drakwold all laid claim to Laurelorn. The elves successfully held the humans back, eventually claiming a decisive victory against an elector count history only remembers as the Unlucky. So devastating was his defeat that no major human expeditions were made into the forest from that day onward. There then came a time when the elves decided to make common cause with the humans to stave off an incursion of Skaven. They allowed Emperor Mandred Skavenslayer and his army to cut through key paths of their forests. Though the army greatly benefited from marching for mere hours over a distance that should have taken several days, a number of soldiers were lost to the forest during the journey, lured by fell voices on the wind and whisked away by branch-like hands. In the end, the Imperial host was able to emerge from Laurelorn mostly intact, surprising the Skaven at the village of Dieterschaffen, driving the Ratmen back into their tunnels. Recognizing the value of the Empire as allies against Greenskins, Skaven, Beastmen, and whoever else would threaten Laurelorn, the Aeonir entered into agreement with the Elector Count of Nordland and allowed the humans to settle between the rivers Salz and Dimst. The borders of how large the settlements could be and how many could be built were strictly enforced, however, and even more so what resources Imperials could take from the land. This caused the lesser nobles of Nordland to constantly pressure their elector count to break the treaty and expand deeper into the forest. In time, the Queen of Laurelorn ordered an Aeonir settlement to be built outside the walls of Altdorf amongst the Amber Hills for the purpose of keeping a closer eye on human politics. While they claim the settlement is temporary, this stated time frame is from the perspective of the immortal elves. Thus have the nearby Imperials seen more and more Aeonir frequent the Reichland as the decades roll by. There was a village by the name of Schlagugel that defied the terms of the Laurelorn Nordland Treaty and was built west of the Dimst River. The villagers wanted to explore the land, believing the stone circle present at the site was of religious significance to the practitioners of the old faith. This belief system predated the formation of the Empire and was older than even the Ulrican religion that Sigmar himself followed, being a worshipper of the White Wolf. In any case, the village soon vanished. The local baron sent a troop to investigate, and they discovered no signs of struggle, no bodies or burnt homes, only the words fog and mercy carved into the nearby trees. Even more confusing was the eventual return of all the villagers who carried on like nothing had happened. Indeed, not one villager remembered disappearing, and stranger still, the village priest was still missing, and there was now a door in the hill underneath the stone circle, where once there was none. Little else is known about the part of the forest the elves reside in. There are, however, rumors of a city of glass deep within Laurelorn that serves as the Aeonir capital. From their history in dealing with the Empire, it can be stated that the Aeonir are more inclined than their ASRAI cousins to involve themselves in the politics of the outside world. Whether this is due to the lack of a geographical barrier comparable to the Grey Mountains of Athel Loren's eastern border, or a deliberate strategic decision by the fabled Queen of Laurelorn is unknown, but the Aeonir are closer to the High Elves than the ASRAI when it comes to diplomatic relations, though both forest-dwelling nations share nearly identical military tactics. I would give a playable Laurelorn faction access to the Intrigued Court and the mechanic where you are able to have vision with other factions that you're trading with, given the similarities when it comes to diplomacy between the Laurelorn elves and the High Elves, while taking away their ability to use the world roots, given the fact that they do not have access to the Oak of Ages.